Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is me clambering about on my bookcases. Behind you can see my boxes of journals, which one day I'll get out and sort through. These are my shelves that sit right beside my my reading chair. I thought I'd have a look at these to see if there's anything that can be reasonably got rid of. I've got to move these first. This is one of my favourite, most treasured photos. It's me and my mum. I'm under 1 year old, I think. 1 year old. In a photo booth in South Shields. Peering into the lens. It's one of the happiest photos. This is it's an original one from the strip of 4 that you get from those machines. We used it as the cover of Strange Boy in 2002. I don't know if I can get that out. It's in a pile there. Maybe I can show this one. This is why I bring down everything. Right. Yeah, there's the book from 2002. Now completely out of print. Thank you, Simon and Schuster, for your faith. Right, I'm going to put this somewhere safe. And a card from my 50th. On my 50th birthday, 4 years ago, I asked all my friends not to give me presents, but if they felt like it, they could make me a card. And my friend Nick, who's a bookseller, made a puffin card, decolletage. No, decoupage. Decolletage is boobs, isn't it? Never mind. There's some of my favourite books represented on there. Right. Okay. Oh, I'm going to have to remove some more of the art. There's a painting of what appears to be the time-space vortex from a fellow Levenshulme artist called C, whose store was next to mine at the weekend. Actually, these went up here not too long ago. Some of these. Let's see. Tuck Everlasting, which was a gift from Nick, who I just mentioned. Beautiful American edition. Another way their books are kind of floppier. I bet you can hear this chair creaking and everything. I seem to remember I really enjoyed this. Natalie Babbitt. I should reread it. Is eternal life a blessing or a curse? This is what young Winnie Foster must decide when she discovers a spring on her family's property whose waters grant immortality. There's one for rereading. Now, 2 very rare Doctor Who books, fanthologies, as they've been called in more recent years. These are about the turn of the century. And this one, Walking in Eternity, edited by Julian Eales, and Perfect Timing 2, edited by Helen Fail and Julian Eales. And they were, this one was for the study of infant cot death, and the other one was raising money for something else. Oh no, the same cause. And they were huge anthologies with lots and lots of the tiniest print in the world, and lots of people of all kinds, lots of Doctor Who authors and actors and all sorts writing stories, much sought after, I believe, and much treasured. There's a Christmassy, you can't see me, there's a Christmassy anthology, that's better, published by Scholastic. So it should have been good, and it's got people like Joan Aiken and Celia Rees. But as I remember, I wasn't that bothered about it. I thought it was going to be like those wonderful Point Horror Christmas specials that I've got, and it wasn't really. These are great anthologies that Puffin did. Stories for whichever age group, and this is stories for 8-year-olds. And they're wonderful retellings. There's a fantastic retelling of Jason and the Golden Fleece in this. I think I read all of these at the particular ages in question. The Nightingale, Hans Andersen. Yep, they're worth saving and keeping a hold of. Jennifer Killick, Dreadwood. I read this last year when I was looking at what kind of spooky middle grade books are there out nowadays for kids, and this is the first in a series, expecting something a bit more kind of goosebumpsy. I thought it was all right. I wasn't driven to carry on reading the series. I don't think it was quite spooky. We did this for book club, Persepolis. Marjane Satrapi, which I'd heard about for years and years and years. It's a graphic novel, very famous, and there's a movie. Devastating, really. It's about education and being educated beyond the bounds of the place that you began in, and about a repressive regime which wants to shove women back. And it's illustrated in this kind of almost like childlike style, or that kind of clear style of Tintin or something. But it's recent history, and you can hardly believe it. She's about my age, so she's talking about being a student and being in this world of goths when she gets to Europe, that I recognise, I suppose. But it's it's a heartbreaking thing, but a lovely piece of work, and one to keep. So I'm building a small pile of things that can happily go, the things that will can have to be kept. This was great, Philip Norman's book on Paul McCartney. It was a Christmas, I think, when I read this. It's colossal. And McCartney's one of those figures that I love reading stuff about. I just admire his talent and his world and his keeping a level head, I suppose. Yep, that was good. It was a good read. Will I read it again? Now, is that the measure of whether you keep a book or not? I think a good measure is also, would you give it to somebody because you think they ought to read it? And sometimes I'm holding on to books in order to give them to the right people, the right person, at some point when they need it or when they'd like to read it. My favourite stuff in that Philip Norman book about McCartney is when the Beatles are breaking up and he's going home to this wonderful house in wherever it is, Hampstead or something, and starts recording by himself and doing his own first solo LP, and finding pleasure in doing the thing that he loves doing, away from all the bullshit of the legal stuff and the weighted down kind of heaviness of what the Beatles had become for him. And then a Neil Gaiman book for kids, Fortunately the Milk, which is a kind of Shaggy Dog tale with drawings by Chris Riddell that I kind of liked, but I think it's probably a gift for someone else. I think that's to go in the gifting pile. That's a good thing. A friend of mine who's a writer has a box by her front door, she says, and it's a kind of, these are books that have come into the house and now they're going out again, whether they're read or unread. They're books that she's going to make use of elsewhere, gift to people. And I like that idea. And there's Robin Ince's Bad Book Club, which I read years ago. I got it from a nice shop in near Buxton, and it's his ramble through his own bad book collection, his eclectic and strange book collection. I love when he says in his blurb, his biography, Robin Ince smells of libraries and charity shops. He hopes to eventually bottle and sell this smell as a popular fragrance. Mine is signed with stuff about the crabs, about Guy and Smith, because, whoops, that's a pleasure we share. Whoops, a fandom. Oh, you can't hear me, can you? Because my microphone. Sorry. We share a love of Guy and Smith's Crabs series. And you can see him sat on the front on top of his crabs. This is a really funny book, and it's serious in places as well. I think he says interesting stuff about what we choose to read and what we choose to chuck out and what we value and what we choose to write about. So that's definitely a keeper for the shelves, as are, of course, Guy N. Smith. Who could get rid of those? Although people, horror writers I know, especially, are very snooty about the legacy of Guy N. Smith, but I think he understood what horror was for, and that was scaring you, making you laugh, and making you buy books, and entertaining you. I love this book about Caligula. I read this during lockdown, I think, when I was really getting into books about the Romans and books that were a bit kind of blood and thundery. This is Simon Turney writing about Caligula and all this stuff about him on his island, his palace, on, I forget the island, but where he would shove people off the cliff to their deaths is horrific, but weirdly compelling as well. Reading historical novels about really disgusting people is a particular pleasure of mine, but I think of people who read historical fiction generally. It's always the badly behaved historical figures that we get books about. Although in this case, All the Light We Cannot See, Anthony Durr, they are kind of innocent, swept up in the midst of war and terrible circumstances. This has been filmed recently, and I've not seen it because I got rid of Netflix because I got sick of Netflix. I'd like to see the film. I loved his next book, Cloud Cuckoo Land. I thought that was amazing. This, I loved the writing. I got bored in the middle and struggled through to the end. It's got that lovely broken spine going on there. I did plough through this. For Marie Law, blind since the age of 6, the world is full of mazes. The miniature of a Paris neighbourhood made by her father to teach her the way home. The microscopic layers within the invaluable diamond that her father guards in the Museum of Natural History. The walled city by the sea where father and daughter take refuge when the Nazis invade Paris, and a future which draws her ever closer to Werner, a German orphan, destined to labour in the mines until a broken radio fills his life with possibility and brings him to the notice of the Hitler Youth. That's right, bits of it are coming back just reading the blurb. It's very bloody and violent at one point, especially. Yeah, that's one to reread, I think. And on So It Goes On, this pile. Now here's a great favourite. I've read this 2 or 3 times in my life. Anne of Green Gables, L.M. Montgomery. I'm not sure it's my favourite copy. It's a nice Puffin Classics one, so it kind of gets a free pass on the shelf for that, I think, because these were nicely done. Whenever they did these Puffin Classics, they were larger than the ones we used to have and quite classy looking. I wish I bought the whole collection like this. They're also big with nice big print. But yeah, the story of Anne, I've only read the first 2. I've bought the rest in various editions, and I think it was last year I went back and reread the first 2. She makes me laugh in all of her attitudes. I think I share them at times. I read the first Bridgerton book, having enjoyed the first series a lot. I think the book was all right, a bit glib, probably. I mean, it's a Regency romance, of course it's glib. It didn't have a sense of its own ridiculousness, though, in the way that Georgette Heyer, for example, has. Obviously from Jane Austen. I don't think it revels in its own camp, which, of course, the TV show does at times. So I didn't feel obliged massively to go on carrying on reading these. And I was disappointed in the second season of the TV show where they removed the main characters and focused us on lesser characters instead. Like, what is the point of that? Now here's a favourite, John Irving's Setting Free the Bears in one of these nice Black Swan editions. Oh, from the 90s. Now, this is Christmas 1991, I read this, having been carried off by the Hotel New Hampshire in the Easter of that year, and I was working my way through these nice editions of John Irving. Look at the font. It's a really friendly font of a good size that Black Swan used to do all their books in. They did the Tales of the City books as well, the Armistead Mopan books, so they were incredibly readable. It shares some material, I think, with the Hotel New Hampshire. It's got bears and motorbikes and hotels and hookers and Vienna. This novel concerns a plot to release all the animals from the Vienna Zoo. It's a kind of caper. That's what his novels are. They're capers, but with very serious undertones. I need to hoik this out, put it with my other favourites of his, and read him again. Not necessarily read a newer one, because his books seemed more kind of bloated and self-important as they went on. I might be wrong about that. I like the ones where they were still somewhat slightly a caper, capricious, that's the word, a caprice. This isn't a caper. Adam Kay's This Is Going to Hurt. It's also very funny, of course, but it's as they say, a searing indictment of the people in charge of the NHS. It takes place, it's been filmed as well, and I couldn't watch it in case it was gory. The book was gory enough. It's mostly about a gynecological ward and all the things that can go wrong. And it's written so well, and I'm so much of a hypochondriac, I started thinking I had everything wrong with me, and of course I couldn't possibly have those things wrong with me that he's looking at on his particular ward. Although there is a funny thing when he deals with a bloke who comes into A&E who's slid down a lamppost and done something unspeakable to himself. It's funny, it's stressful, it's gory, it's educational, and I really liked it. And I read it in one night, I think. Now, scattered through my books, there are lots of editions of Paddington. These reprints with David McKee covers in Lion, also in Lion the ones that I had as a kid. In this particular edition with Peggy Fortnum. Illustrations. Now, I'm in something of a quandary with Paddington because I've got multiple editions, and of course I've gone buying hardbacks as well over the years. Maybe I should slim down, so I've just got the best edition of each of the 15 actual books in hardback, say. I don't know. What do you think? The hardbacks are so lovely. There's Paddington on top, which I think was one of the last ones before his hiatus. Paddington Takes the Air. All these came from eBay. They're battered around, they're red, they're not particularly well looked after, but they've been used. And Visit to the Dentist. I think they're probably library copies, or I don't know, somebody's beloved collection. Paddington Marches On. I think the hardbacks are smashing. Of course, these will be kept forever. The Blue Peter Paddington storybook. Now, there's two of these, and they're kind of slightly rarer stories, and I'd forgotten that they were around. Paddington at Large, look at that. Yeah, so I've got to make some decisions about how much of Paddington I keep. I'll just keep them all, I think. What do you think? I'm going to give up in a few minutes, filling up time. Now, oh, it's got dusty. I've talked before about this series of Coronation Street novels by Maggie Sullivan. This is We'll Meet Again on Coronation Street, and if you look, oh, maybe I'll just pull them out. Oh, oh dear. And there's some more here, and there's one over there. There's 6 altogether. That was the one that began this series, Christmas on Coronation Street. A title which had to exist somewhere in the world. It had to exist at some point. Snow on the Cobbles, which I think was a bit later. This is the second one, Mother's Day on Coronation Street. That one is mostly about Annie Walker, who ends up running the Rover's Return. Yeah, so there's 5 of these. The other one is somewhere here. And the most recent one, which I haven't read yet, is, oh, there's The Land Girls. And she's moving further away from the street with the Land Girls. We go down south. They're all set during the war, before and after the Second World War. So they're the lives of characters before we got to know them on TV. And I really love them. I think they must have come to an end now. The most recent one is just in paperback, so they're not really looking after the series or its fans as much as they might have done. I really like them though. And I hope the Saga series continues for Corrie. It's the perfect form for Corrie to be in, I think. A bit like, 90s science fiction novel was the perfect way for Doctor Who to have a bookish life. They should continue it into the life of the show, I think, or backwards maybe into the past, the further past. And if Maggie Sullivan doesn't want to do any more, I know a particular northern Saga writer called Elsie who might well be keen on helping out. Auntie Mame, Patrick Dennis. There's a camp classic. Auntie Mame and I learned to have one another in as brief and painless, learn to love one another in as brief and painless a period as possible, that her amazing personality would attract me, just as it had seduced thousands of others was a foregone conclusion. Her helter-skelter charm was, after all, notorious. When the shy young heir, Patrick, is orphaned at the tender age of 10, the only family he has is his wealthy and eccentric aunt who is a fabulous New York socialite named Mame. While prone to dramatic costumes, flights of fancies, and expensive whims, not least her lives as a muse and as a Southern belle, Auntie Mame will raise Patrick the only way she knows how, with humour, mishaps, unforgettable friends, and lots of love. Yeah, I came to this very late. 2010, actually, I read this the first time. I was pointed in its direction by someone who's obsessed with the musical, and I thought the book was just brilliant. So, on the permanent pile. These, I don't know. This was a kind of revisiting of Winnie the Pooh by 2 of the writers in this I really like. Kate Saunders, I love her kids' books, and Brian Sibley, I love his books on Narnia, especially. Maybe I'll try it again. I think writing about Winnie the Pooh is really difficult. I think getting that tone to work now is quite hard, but I'll try again with this. I think it's a nicely produced book anyway. Here's an Ann Tyler, which I reread last year for book club. All of her books stand up to rereading, and this is one that covers a longer period than most of her books. It goes on for decades, and it's the life of a marriage, really. A marriage that happens in a kind of ad hoc way as the boys go marching off to war, and lasts. I think that's right. Anyway, one of her best, it turns out. I didn't remember it being that, but on rereading, it gained so much. It's like certain books, it's like when you get an old piece of furniture that's been painted and varnished, and you strip all that off and you polish it, and the grain comes through. I think that's, I think books of any kind of depth and worth have that about them. Reading is like reconditioning them and bringing the grain and the depth and the life of the wood back to life. Wow. I'm going to stop there because I've gone way over. I hope this will still load. I'm going to pull some more of these books down in my next video, but I will see you soon, and do all the things underneath and leave comments, and goodbye.